isn't just the ego that changes, the unconscious changes. The rule of thumb that Jung has taught us is that the unconscious takes the same attitude towards the ego as the ego takes towards it. So that's one aspect of how the unconscious changes when the ego pays attention to it. But the unconscious also changes when the ego has seen with its own eyes the raw view of the primordial psyche. Believe me, it's a terrible thing to see. I'll show you later a picture whereby that takes place. That's one of the Job pictures in Blake's series that I want to show you, where Yahweh is showing Job his backside, and what he's showing him is Behemoth and Leviathan, the terrible monsters. That's an image of getting a glimpse of what the primordial psyche looks like, what God's backside is, you see. And when one has that view, not just hearsay knowledge, when one sees it in shuddering, knee-knocking reality, that changes the nature of the primordial psyche. First of all, in oneself, and we have reason to believe that the effect goes beyond just one's own personal psyche.
Do you believe that, as I do, that Jung will be remembered by future generations, not primarily as a theoretician of depth psychotherapy, but for the religious aspect of his work?
I'm not a prophet, but I have a perception as to, in broad outlines, what I expect to happen. It's obvious to any thoughtful person that Western society is hurtling toward some terrible catastrophe. That's obvious. That means that we are going to be exposed to massive suffering, something along the order of what went on 2,000 years ago with the disintegration of the Roman Empire, where the established social structures break down and chaos intervenes, you see. Something like that's going to happen. And in such a case, there will be reversions to more primitive modes of behavior. There will be a regressive movement backwards. There will be a regression to tribalisms of all kinds, I'm sure, to more primitive structures, more localized structures. There will be a regression to concrete and fundamentalist religions of various kinds. And what I hope is that for what Toynbee calls the creative minority, the collective suffering on such a vast scale will force reflective individuals to look around desperately for some kind of understanding of what's happening to them. If they're able to resist the regressive tendency to revert to more primitive modes of functioning, if they can hold on to their consciousness enough, then they might discover Jung. Then they might pick up Answer to Job and read him really attentively and realize that what's being experienced and what is taking place. The emergence of a new God image and the possibility, as I mentioned earlier, of a genuine unification of both the individual and the world. I think that in the long run, that's what's in store for the age of Aquarius after a terrible time of troubles.
In your book, The Christian Archetype, subtitled A Jungian Commentary on the Life of Christ, you write, quote, "The goal of the incarnation cycle, like the goal of individuation, is the conjunctio. The time has come for the psychic opposites, heaven and earth, male and female, spirit and nature, good and evil, which have long been torn asunder in the Western psyche, to be reconciled." Can you elaborate on this idea?
Yeah, the basic question is, what is this thing called the conjunctio? You know, Jung's last work, his last book-length work, was on that subject. The title was The Mystery of the Conjunctio, a very sizable tome. And it was the theme that really preoccupied him in his last years. He had some profound experiences of the conjunctio during his illness in 1944, which he reports in his Memory Streams Reflections. And the question is, how are we to understand this symbolic image? See, it comes from alchemy. As I mentioned earlier, the goal of the alchemical process was the philosopher's stone, and it was created, so the alchemists thought, by the conjunctio of purified opposites. So the basic image was the conjunctio of Sol and Luna. Sun and moon create the philosopher's stone. So that the conjunctio is the process which achieves the philosopher's stone, which achieves selfhood, which achieves the living connection to the God image. Now, and it was pictured as a marriage, or as a sexual intercourse. Now we know that just on the biological level, the goal of biological existence is the creation of offspring, which is achieved through sexual intercourse. And that's the reason that nature has built into us the experience of supreme bliss at the peak of sexual intercourse. Nature, of course, knows what she's doing, and that is the goal of biological existence, sexual intercourse. So it's the physical conjunctio is the goal of our existence as biological organism. But what Jung has demonstrated is that the psychological conjunctio is the goal of existence as a psychological organism. Now the only difficulty is being able to grasp what that means. It's easy enough to grasp what sexual intercourse means. We can encompass that in a definition, but the psychological conjunctio is a image of the achievement of totality, which transcends the ego. It transcends, therefore, the rational ability to define it. Therefore, we can't define it. We can talk about it, and we can sort of circumambulate it and bring up images that express it, but we can't grasp it or contain it rationally because it's bigger than we are. There's reason to believe that probably the conjunctio is only experienced in its complete form in death, in physical death. And I think that's good to know about, because there's a real need to reappraise in the modern world the nature and significance of death. Death is the goal of life, and in a different sense than Freud meant it, there really is a death instinct. We've got the instinctual equipment built into us to take care of all the basic occurrences in human existence. These are the archetypal patterns that are built into us. And our physical life ends in death, and we've got the instinctual wisdom to relate to that phenomenon properly if we're in touch with that wisdom. And part of that wisdom, I think, is the realization that one level of psychological existence is achieved and fulfilled in the process of physical death, and the conjunctio is realized probably to the fullest extent at that time. And Jung's visions of the conjunctio occurred during a near-death experience. He almost died during that 1944 illness. But it's an image of great joy and fulfillment. It's the biological experience of sexuality on the psychological plane. And that's why sexual images have to be used to refer to it. And perhaps our finest document concerning it is the Song of Songs in the Bible. There, of course, is more to be said about it. It's an image of totality. It's an image of the reconciliation of opposites. On the simplest level, it's the reconciliation of the opposites of the male and female. But those images actually can be used to express all the pairs of opposites, so that it's an image of harmony beyond the conflict of all the opposites that go to make up the struggle and agony of existence.